Welcome to an Epiphany with Tiffany. My name is Tiffany, and this is my podcast. On today's episode, we're going to talk about why I feel like we crave relationships. If you listened to last episode, I promised that would be the topic. If you haven't listened to last episode, stop this one now and go back and listen because they definitely connect together. So today is a little bit more of a free-for-all, meaning I haven't planned out much of what I'm going to say. I don't have a whole lot of notes. I just kind of know the topic I want to talk about. So with that said, there might be a few more ums or me kind of pausing to collect my thoughts. There might even be some random background noise because I'm not currently home alone. So if that happens, I apologize ahead of time. But I'm not really going to edit this episode down. Whatever comes out is going to come right off the cuff. I noticed listening back to the last couple episodes, I've kind of sound a little pre-planned, so I don't want to do that. This episode is going to be fun. All right, so why do I think we crave relationships? Well, back in 2013, that seems so freaking long ago. I was in Arizona for a semester of my undergrad, and I was at Arizona Christian University. And I was in a couple of different biblical studies classes, as well as like a world, I think it was technically world religions class. And it was pretty funny because, well, funny and ironic, I guess, but that's the way that God works sometimes. So there were these different topics that were happening on the same day within these classes, and it was just one of those moments where God was like, "Hello, I'm trying to catch your attention," and I was like, "Okay, I'm listening." But the one professor was talking about how, Adam and Eve, and we was talking about the garden and just trying to get us to think about what that would feel like for them, that having this relationship with God, and you made this one choice and all of a sudden that's severed, in the sense that they I'm trying to remember exactly how he worded it. So they had this close relationship with God because God would walk with them in the garden, right? And then once sin entered the world, that was taken away in that form. God is still with us, obviously, but it was more of a communion at that point in time because God was present in the physical form, walking in the garden. And once Adam and Eve were removed from the garden, that went away. So that kind of stuck with me. I was like, oh, I never thought about it from that perspective of how how different that would be for them, because obviously that's how it has always been for us, right? So we were used to not having like the physical presence of God, right? But that was not what they had. They had the physical presence of God, and that got screwed up. So anyway, now on to my other class. We were talking about relationships and how we crave connection. And I was just kind of sitting there in class going, huh. Like, so, if I'm thinking about this from Adam and Eve's perspective of having that connection with God and then all of a sudden being severed, like, no wonder now we, as their descendants, like distant descendants, obviously, but um, we crave that. We crave that kind of connection. We look for it in, sometimes all the wrong places. We look for it in others. We look for the validation from somebody else, or we're trying to find our worth in how other people see us. And so it's just sitting there in class, and it just it honestly overwhelmed me a little bit. um, it's not difficult. I guess difficult's kind of not the right word, but I feel like most of us have this need to feel connection, right? Or to feel validated by the people around us, or, just have this sense of familiarity and like family and love. So it's not hard to, you know, I guess make that correlation between why we do certain things or why we're attracted to certain people. Um, Even if those people aren't necessarily the best for us. So, because we all on some level validate these feelings, whether they're not whether they're negative things like I'm not worth it or whatever, on some level, we all validate that in other people, or even the feeling of worthiness, like we can validate that in somebody else too. So it's not difficult to understand why that hole, for lack of a better word, is there. If you grew up in the church, you've probably seen the depiction of like the big chasm, right? And the cross that's in the middle of the chasm that separates humanity from God. So that's just kind of like what I picture now when I think about relationships and how God sent Jesus to the world to fill that gap, right? He is our relationship connector now. He's the one that allows for us to come back into relationship with God. So my professor actually talked about that and how without Jesus, like we wouldn't have that, the ability to have that kind of relationship with God. And I just kind of like to think of it that way with my friendships and with my family and stuff. So, like if you're in a relationship, whether that's a friendship or a romantic relationship, and you're not feeling like you're being fulfilled in that relationship, it's probably because you're looking at the relationship in the wrong way. Like you can have great relationships with people and, friendships. Like let's just take friendships. Like I have a couple of really good girlfriends and some good guy friends too, but I'm specifically talking about my girlfriends. So, there's a couple that I've had friendships with for a really long time. So, our relationships have been through the ringer. And when I kind of reflect back on those relationships and look at the times where we may or may not have been, or well, let's just be honest, we weren't on the same page. So we were fighting about something. Because, girls fight. Some kind of disagreement or whatever. So when I think about those times and I kind of reflect on where I personally was at with my relationship with God, and there's a correlation between my lack of time in the Word, or my lack of time in worship, or my lack of time in prayer, and the issues that were happening within those relationships. Now, it wasn't like, always just because of my relationship issues with God. In all honesty, it was probably theirs as well. So because we as friends were out of communion with God, that was also causing issues within our relationship. Right? Now, the opposite is true as well, where there have been times where either I've come to a friend and said, "Hey, I just been kind of noticing this stuff. I want to talk to you about it," whatever the situation may be or was. And because of where that friend was, it wasn't received well. And I haven't always been the most tactful. I've learned to be more tactful as I've gotten older, but when I was younger, not so great. So, when those kinds of situations have happened, and I just think about it, and I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense that, of course we weren't on the same page because we were kind of doing our own thing, and we weren't in communion with God, therefore we couldn't be in the proper kind of communion with each other. So, I'm talking about that with friendships, right? Now, let's think about that in like a romantic relationship. Whether you're dating somebody or you're married, or even if you're just interested in somebody and you kind of haven't maybe crossed over to that line of officially dating, like if there's issues there, it all comes back to where you as an individual are at with your relationship with God, where that other person is at with their relationship with God, and then where you both are at together. It all comes down to that connection, like that triangle. I've heard it talked about at many weddings because I've been to, I feel like 1,000 at this point. I know that's exaggerated, but I've been to a lot of weddings. Um, so, how there's the Bible verse that always gets used, is escaping my mind what the reference is right this second, but uh, the three chords that are joined together, right? And what God has brought together, let no man bring asunder. Or is that, yeah, that's paraphrased. Um, so, if you think about that in a triangle, right? Like if you've been to a wedding, I'm sure most pastors have used like the triangle, um, where God is the tip of the head of the triangle, and the man and the woman are the bases of the triangle, right? And if you're not all connected together, there's going to be issues. So when my professor was bringing this up, that's what they used too. They used the triangle. And I was sitting there and I was like, wow, because I'm a visual person. I'm an auditory, but also visual person. So when they chose to, kind of present it this way in the triangle form, and they also even like use like red lines and stuff because they had it drawn up on the board. So they use like different lines and stuff to kind of represent like if there's a sin issue. So like say it was me and I was dating somebody, or I'm married, but I'm not. Anyway, so like we'll just figuratively example. So if say I'm married, right, and I have a sin issue, so like my relationship with God isn't as strong as it could be, and so there's like this red line or like a blockade between me and God, right? And so there's that at some point is going to cause issues with my husband. Same thing if he's got some sin issues in his life, and there's some blockades there. There's going to cause issues between, between us. So the other thing too that the professor brought up is, that us ladies tend to let me figure out how to word this. Tend to put a lot of stock in our man. So if we put our guy up on a pedestal, right? And again, we're thinking about the triangle here. So let's say that I'm the left of the triangle, like the base of the left, and I start to replace my time with God with more time with my husband, and I start to kind of walk towards my husband instead of trying to walk towards God, right? So the triangle becomes not a normal triangle, and then things start to fall apart. Same thing can be said if the guy puts us on a pedestal and he starts spending way too much time focusing on us instead of the proper amount of time focusing on God. So anytime that's off balance, there's going to be problems, right? Just like the same thing if there's like a sin issue that's blocking us from God. And even if that, like, especially if that sin issue is something that our partner doesn't know about too. So, like, there can be even a blockade. And so then, like, if it's me, I'm off over here on my little part of the triangle all by my lonesome. So, of course, I'm going to be angry and frustrated and feeling like I'm not worthy or, whatever those emotions might be, right? So, of course, it's going to cause problems just all around. And so the way that the professor was like kind of bringing this up, he said that the reason the triangle, is a great representation is because it's equal parts. While yes, God is the head, it's still perfectly balanced. And that just hit me in a whole new way. I was like, wow, like what? Okay, God, I hear you. Yes, I just kind of wanted to share that. And I hope that, has made some kind of impact on people. Again, this isn't just like romantic relationships. Like, we can't have communion as a body of Christ if there's issues, like if we're upset at a family member or a friend or a significant other, or, or we have some deep rooted shame or something that is causing us to feel like, oh, they don't love me because they know about this, which is bullcrap. Just that's a lie, straight from the devil. Anyway, or should be a lie straight from the devil, because we should love each other no matter what, right? Unconditional love. Um, but anyway, so when we get wrapped up in those things and we're not communing with God, we can't commune with each other. Just going to let that one kind of sit for a second. I'm going to repeat it. If we are not communing properly with God, we cannot properly commune with each other. Yeah, that one was a pretty big, like, mind-blowing moment sitting there in class in Arizona. And again, like, when I reflect back on things in my life in different situations, it's like, whoa. Again, no wonder these issues were there, because either I wasn't in communion with God or both of us weren't in communion with God, so therefore our relationship suffered. So again, if you're in a relationship and things might not be how you want, like, go to God. Take that all to Him. And then also go to the other person. But you got to go to the other person from a place of respect, a place of love. You can't go at them angry. And that's coming from a girl who has not always done that very well. I'm very reactive. Very, very reactive. And, it's hard to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, well, why am I feeling this way? Is it me? Is it okay for me to have these feelings? Because, of course, feelings are valid, right? But they're also not the end all. So, to just take that time and sit before reacting. I'm so bad at that, but I'm learning. Definitely been getting a few lessons in that lately, which just kind of tells me that, again, it's something that I will probably always have to work on. But when you have those moments where you do take time to kind of sit back and reflect and go, okay, is this because I'm not in communion with God? Or maybe you went to a friend and brought up something that they weren't willing to hear yet. That's not just you. That's not always on you. That's what they got going on. So I was talking to a friend last night, ironically, about a situation where they approached a fellow believer and, in love, and was trying to bring up some stuff, and how that person who did the approaching was kind of feeling like, am I crazy? Because of how this other person reacted. Well, again, no, because that reaction was probably just that person was not ready to hear what was being said, right? Because again, we don't like our crap pointed out, right? Like we want to hide that stuff, because if we have shame, or we have sin that is prevalent in our life at that moment, and we're trying to hide it from God because we think we're smart and we can do that, or like just whatever the situation may be, and we're trying to cover that up, and somebody comes to us and points out either that issue or something else that is still an issue in our life, of course we're going to react. We're going to get defensive. We're going to be like, whoa, 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 no. You crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. But, I've had that happen many times. And, at some point you just gotta realize, like, when you're coming to somebody in love and you're not coming out of, anything else other than that, if they react badly, you still did your part, right? You still did what you should do as a believer. And how they take that, that's on them. That's not on you. And I've heard that, I've been told that so many times. So many times. Because I've been that person too that hasn't reached out to somebody and gone like, hey, you know, I kind of I kind of noticed that you seem a little off. I just want to make sure everything's okay, right? And then come to find out that this person was struggling this whole time, and I didn't do anything. I didn't go to them. I wasn't supportive. Again, situations differ, but if you're coming at it from love and you're not coming at it just to like put this person down, you're not in the wrong, right? Like if we're trying to correct believers, because that is our job as believers. If you didn't know that, go read the Bible. It is our job to correct other believers, especially if we see them like off the freaking deep end. Okay, sorry, I'm getting off on a little bit of a rant here. Anyway, if you're coming to that person in love, you're not in the wrong. You really aren't. And their reaction is proof of that. because there's one or two reactions, right? There's the reaction of, okay, you're right, like, thank you for bringing this up to me, like, man, I love you, I got you, bro, like, or whatever the situation is. But then there's the other side, right, where they get really angry and they're like, you crazy, that's not me, that's, I'm not doing that, and basically people need to step up to my level or whatever. Again, it all comes down to how we're approaching the situation too. And we can't be held accountable for how somebody responds to us. There's another epiphany for you. I kind of like these free-for-all things. They're just stuff that starts to flow out. So anyway, yeah, if you feel like there's any issues between you and somebody, either in your family or just another loved one, think about it. Are you out of relationship with God? Are they out of relationship with God? And that's why, you guys aren't meshing right. I've also talked about in past episodes, like how important communication is in any relationship, friendship, family, romantic. Communication. And if you're not communicating with God on a daily basis, and you're not communicating with your partner on a daily basis, that just leaves so much opening for the enemy, right? So people talk to each other. Again, that's another topic. It's going to be next episode. I feel like how to properly communicate. Because like I mentioned before, people don't know how to properly communicate. And we need to work on that as a group, as humanity. We need to learn how to communicate. Anyway, I'm going to rein this back in and stop ranting. If you found value in this episode, let me know, comment, share it, text me if you have my number. Yeah, this was a fun one. I hope it wasn't like too all over the place. And as always, thanks for listening. Hope y'all have a blessed day, whether you're listening to this in the morning, the afternoon, the evening, or late at night. Doesn't matter. I hope that you are blessed. I hope that you are actively seeking a relationship with God, so that way you can actively seek relationships with others. All right, y'all. Have a good one.